Welcome, battle-hardened viewers, to the show where we won't answer your burning questions, like if revenge is a dish best served cold, is it ice cream, and why do we market revenge to children? Welcome to Cartoon Gateway, the show where I talk about the average trials and tribulations of a cartoon fan. I'm your host, David Hollander. For this episode, I wanted to talk about something interesting. Talking. Or at the very least, talking while animated. That's right, we're doing a voice acting episode. Never have I regretted more not being animated myself for an episode. Voice acting is a very underappreciated aspect of the animation process, and I want to highlight that today. It's not just a job, it's a skill, and it's bigger than animation itself sometimes. And there's plenty of different kinds of voice acting out there. Character acting, obviously, that's the main one to think of. There's reaction noises, ADR, dubbing, all kinds of things I want to touch on today. Again, like some of my previous episodes, this is mostly going to be a random sort of talking about whatever I want to talk about kind of episode. By no means comprehensive, just musings on voice acting. Oh, I get it, because that's the title. And heads up, this is a cartoon discussion show, but for the sake of broadening the topic, I am allowing instances of stuff outside of what I regularly cover, which will include anime, video games, animated movies, etc. So the first thing I'd talk about with voice acting is voice actors, because where else would I start? The microphone industry? I can't go back to that, I only just got the use of my legs back. Voice actors are a weird kind of celebrity, because there's plenty you've almost definitely heard, but unless you're really looking for them, you probably won't immediately recognize them. And there's plenty of voice actors that are absolutely everywhere. In fact, as a testament to this, as I'm writing this episode, I'm going to just randomly write the names of other voice actors that come into my mind and make them pop up on screen. The first voice actor that's everywhere that I think of is John DiMaggio, voice of, say, Bender Bending Rodriguez, Jake the Dog, and dear God, if I keep reading his filmography, I'm gonna go insane. This guy is like the king of being everywhere, but he's also recognizable. Like, he can play two characters that sound very different, but they still simultaneously sound like John DiMaggio. Oh yeah, Phil Lamar, see? I told you, they keep coming to me. Tara Strong is pretty much the voice of your childhood if you grew up in the 2000s. Okay, dang it, they're interrupting sentences now. Please stop, Tom Kenny. A good voice actor can become basically unrecognizable between two roles, like Michael Adamthwaite, who's played both Jay in Ninjago and Colossus in X-Men Evolution. I've verified that from multiple sources, listened to both shows, and I don't even believe that. That's how good he is.
Your wounded pride drives you to madness.
And here I thought we were at rock bottom. This is so much worse.
Why don't people talk about him? Moving right along, D. Bradley Baker is one of the most impressive voice actors I've seen, not just because he can play multiple characters in the same scene, not just because he can voice two clones of the same character and they'll still sound different, but because he's done so much animal effect voice work. Perry the Platypus over here has done so much work just making animal noises. If you've heard an animal in a cartoon and it's not a stock sound effect, it's probably D. Bradley Baker. Okay, that guy's not everywhere so much anymore, but the man's done impressive work. Respect to Scott McNeil. But Roger Craig Smith is impressive too. He's no D. Bradley Baker, but he was the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog for about a decade, and he's done a ton of other stuff. Same with Yuri Lowenthal, who's mostly done anime dubbing, but he's also the voice of Ben 10 for 3 consecutive shows. And it took until 2018 for him to voice Spider-Man. Speaking of anime dubbing, Steve Bloom is another big name over there, but he's done so much outside of that sphere too. He's basically the default voice actor for Wolverine nowadays, and he's also that one space guy from the Toonami bumpers. Okay, of all the voice actors to think of at the same time, why those two? That's a weird combo. Brain's being weird. You also get cases like Ben Schwartz, who I'm bringing up solely for the comedic purposes of talking about how this dude played Skidmark in Turbo. He played Leonardo in Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He's played so many blue characters. I'm probably gonna pull up examples aside me. In fact, he's played Sonic too. This dude is on a quest to play every blue character, and that's funny to me. It's why I changed shirts, by the way. I don't know if you can see, it's a little thing. I don't want to be voiced by Ben Schwartz. We've also got, other voice actors common associations with color. Vincent Tong, the voice of Kai from Ninjago, who's also voicing Muck on Bob the Builder nowadays, which is weird because now we have a guy who's voicing everything red. Oh no.
I'm gonna be voiced by someone else now.
Most of these guys rose in the 90s and 2000s, but we're seeing more nowadays. Zeno Robinson is a voice actor who's pretty recently started popping up in a ton of stuff and in a variety of roles. It will slay me forever that Hunter from the Owl House, the poster child of 2020's edgelords, shares a voice actor with Thrash, just the chillest motorcycle in Transformers Earth Spark. He's also Go from Pokemon Journeys, and seeing this guy show up in so much stuff around the same time without warning was surreal to say the least. Then I checked his filmography, and it turns out he's been dubbing anime for ages, so he's worked for his rise to fame. Chris Diamantopoulos is another voice actor prominent in the 2010s. Seems he's been doing screen acting since the 2000s, but he slowly started to become a very prominent voice actor in the middle of the 2010s, and yep, this guy was Mickey Mouse. For almost a decade's worth of animations, theme park animatronics, and a bunch of other stuff. Oh boy, Greg DeLeese and Laura Tom. Okay, this bit is gonna drive me crazy if I keep other voice actors showing up. This must be what going insane is like. This gag was a mistake. Last voice actor, or at least probably the last voice actor I'm gonna directly shout out for their great work is Lacey Chabert, who some people might recognize as the original voice of Meg on Family Guy, you know, before Mila Kunis took over the role. Chabert's done so much other stuff that it frightens me. Like, not that it's a comparatively insane amount of roles, but I swear, Lacey Chabert has made some deal with a pagan deity to bamboozle me whenever she shows up. Every time I am watching a show with her in it, I never recognize her. I always have to be told that's Lacey Chabert. And it's not like most of these roles sound insanely different. Like, I like to think that I have a trained ear when it comes to picking out individual voice actors. So, consistently not recognizing this one is driving me insane. She's Eliza Thornberry, she's Zatanna, she's Danny Byrne, she's Gwen Stacy. At this point, I'm not entirely convinced my own mother isn't secretly voiced by Lacey Chabert. That's enough, okay? Much as I want to shout out voice actors that are pretty much everywhere or are insanely talented, or usually both, because you don't get one without the other. Like, I got so many people I want to talk about, but I don't want this episode to just be a list of voice actors. One more thing. Yeah. Peter Cullen, he recently got a Lifetime Achievement Award for his work, and frankly, he deserves it. Just know that there is basically an entire world of actors who provided their voices for countless projects, and I want to highlight that because these guys rarely get the credit they deserve outside of the animation circles. So let's talk about some weird facets of voice acting that span from relevant to dumb, because that's generally my style. Some of that includes how much skill it takes to voice act. Acting in general is one of those things that everyone just assumes is easy until they actually try it, and in a similar vein, voice acting has a lot more nuance to it that you have to understand. Being good at speaking in general helps, which you wouldn't think is a skill, but there wouldn't be classes on the subject if it wasn't a skill. But that doesn't just extend to speaking, it extends to how you sound. What do I mean by that? Well, there could be a lot of things, but I mean what I'm gonna call character voices and speaking voices. Because there's a difference that I don't think most people appreciate. Okay, here's an example of that. One can pretty easily imitate Stewie Griffin, or Quagmire, or Peter Griffin, yeah, from Family Guy, all of which are voiced by Seth MacFarlane. I'm willing to bet if you're watching this and you're a guy with a relatively versatile voice, you can imitate at least one of those three. Try it, go ahead. It doesn't have to be spot on. I mean, you heard me a second ago. Give it a whirl, come on. Good? Now try to imitate Brian. He's also voiced by Seth MacFarlane, the same guy who voices all those other guys, but it's really hard to imitate Brian and genuinely sound like him. You can try, but the closest you can usually get sounds very clearly like an imitation, a caricature at worst. That's because Seth MacFarlane uses character voices for pretty much every other role he voices in Family Guy, but he uses his regular speaking voice specifically for Brian. And it's really hard to imitate someone's speaking voice. I can do my best to imitate Steve Bloom's performance as Starscream, but if you asked me to talk like how Steve Bloom normally talks, I'd draw a blank. Which brings me to a contentious topic in this field, recasts. Sometimes, for various reasons, a voice actor needs to be replaced, a character needs to be recast in the middle of a show's run. This can generate some of the weirdest and most unpredictable responses from fandom. For instance, when Justin Roiland left Rick and Morty, the title characters he played had to be recast. Ian Cardoni picked up Rick, and Harry Belden was cast as Morty. The show was quite hesitant to reveal the new voices at first, probably expecting backlash from their fans, even though the two were basically sound-alikes of Roiland. Listen to these guys back to back. They are dead on.
I'm a leg! A leg, Morty! Turn myself into a pickle, Morty! Boom! Big reveal, I'm a pickle!
And even sounding almost verbatim like the characters they were cast as didn't stop largely negative fan reactions. Probably because Rick and Morty as a fandom is entirely made up of people who make meth addicts look rational, but I digress. Or sometimes the opposite happens, like Solar Opposites, where Roiland left the show and Corvo got replaced, and many people lauded the voice actor change because it sounded too much like Rick before anyway, but then other people just got mad because recast. I don't get fandom sometimes, is my point. But conversely, there's situations like Kratos in God of War. Initially, Kratos was voiced by T.C. Carson, who provided an iconically angry performance for the franchise's lead character. Even lines that weren't particularly spectacular were given life by Carson's performance.
Is this how you face me, coward? I am through doing the bidding of the gods.
But then God of War 4 happened. We had a new setting, new tone, and a new Kratos, which came with a new voice, Christopher Judge. And obviously there was some outcry at the initial announcement, but Judge has gotten a lot of praise for his take on Kratos, and why shouldn't he? Judge's Kratos is by many measures a very different character from Carson's Kratos. It's much more soft-spoken, like a veteran, that's the best way I can put it.
I'm a god boy from another land far from here.
Carson's Kratos ripped the guy's head off because the dude had glowing eyes and needed the lantern. Judge's Kratos delivers borderline Shakespearean monologues about the futility of change and chronic self-hatred. One of these guys is more introspective, one of them is more interesting at a party. And for the most part, Judge's performance has gotten fairly positive response. Carson's Kratos obviously has his fans still, there's no debating that, but Christopher Judge took a character and truly made him his own. It's also pretty common for voice actors to be replaced after they've died, if a project of theirs is still running, of course. For instance, Andrew Francis was out of nowhere cast to take up the voice of Cole in the Ninjago franchise in less than ideal circumstances after having provided various voices throughout the series. Cole's previous voice actor, Kirby Morrow, who held the role since 2011, passed away in 2020, which meant Cole had to be recast if the show wanted to keep him around. Spoilers, they did. It was a difficult road. Kirby Morrow seemed to be using his speaking voice for Cole, which meant the recast did stick out more than it would have otherwise. But the response from fans seems to have been encouraging in light of the rather sad reason for the change. Not every recast is because an actor dies, though. In the 2012 iteration of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Leonardo was recast twice. What's even weirder is that the show went as far as to justify the voice change in-universe. The second time, not the first time. But listen, I don't get why Jason Biggs was let go from the show, but if you were gonna justify the change to Seth Green anyway, just let the dude voice the rest of the season, then change the voice. Because honestly, that's not fair to Dominic Catchambone, the second guy, by making his brief tenure so short. This dude was basically set up as, oh, I'm the new voice of Leo, psych not, that just seems disrespectful to me. Bit of a tangent, I know, but the point is, fandom reaction to recasting isn't a universal thing. Sometimes it's nice, sometimes it's visceral and evil. So if you want to be frightened by the uncertainty of the universe, you know what to do. Rewatch this segment, engage. Of note, by no means a requirement for a voice actor, sometimes other vocal skills can be really useful in the field. If you can convincingly do an accent of some kind, that could be valuable. Singing in particular is a really good skill. You'd be surprised how much it comes up. There are several instances of a cartoon character having a regular voice actor, but their singing voice is provided by someone else. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it's an opportunity and you can use it if you're an aspiring voice actor. It also makes for really good success stories too. Diamond White's first voice acting roles were in the early 2010s. She was a kid at the time, and she made it onto season 2 of The X Factor because it turned out she was a really good singer. So, X Factor fans, that one contestant you saw back in season 2 who made it to the top 6 is also a voice actor, and if you didn't know it, well now you know. And I've kind of been alluding to it this whole time, but let's talk about another huge facet of voice acting, and that's dubbing. When something recorded in one language is recorded in another, that's dubbing. Japanese anime gets dubbed into English, English media gets dubbed in other languages. This kind of work is super common and important. Yes, you can just subtitle everything, but not everyone wants to read when they could be watching, so dubs exist to make things easier to watch for certain audiences. This results in a bunch of sub versus dub debates, which frankly I don't want to get into. There are people who are convinced that the German voice actor for Stand-in American Dad is better than his American voice actor, and I just take that in good faith. The same way I take doomsday prophecies. It just sounds crazy, and even if it's true, I hardly care anyway. I'm what you'd call tired. People don't give dubbing enough credit in terms of voice work, and we'll get to why that tends to be the case, but there's a lot at play. Translating a sentence into a different language can change the rhythm the line is spoken with, the timing of other spoken lines, the meter of the sentence itself. And if there's a lot of rapid dialogue, or if there's a pause in the character's lip-syncing animations, that's where we get problems. Especially nowadays, when common practice dictates to follow the lip movements of the characters as closely as possible when dubbing. Sometimes you have to completely change a sentence, and even its meaning just to fit in a scene. This means that dubbing work tends to be pretty strict when it comes to editing and timing because of the translation work involved. So why don't dubbed voice actors get the credit they deserve? Well, there's an answer to that, and you can thank solid 2 decades of really poorly dubbed anime. Throughout the 90s and 2000s, a whole bunch of anime, particularly shows made for younger audiences, to promote toys, games, and whatnot, hit screens with some really subpar voice acting. You'd be surprised how little companies seem to care about this stuff, but importing a show is cheaper than making one from scratch. I get it, that's why we lost Animaniacs and got Pokemon. So we got a deluge of anime dubs for kids, filled with voice actors who weren't paid that much, voice directors who likely didn't care, translators who didn't always have the resources they needed, networks that like to censor stuff almost randomly, and a lot of people who just wanted to go home and get a paycheck. I'm not saying all anime from this time period were poorly dubbed, but what I am saying is that Transformers Energon is like a fever dream because the scripts are filled with outright dubbed nonsense. I have a rant to go on, but I'm gonna spare y'all, but there is a reason dubs don't have the best reputation, but credit where it's due. This is basically not a problem anymore. And it's a proving ground where a lot of voice actors get their start. I'm not about to disrespect that. But now that I've covered that sector, let's talk about another huge discussion topic. When non-voice actors get to voice act, for whatever reason. You also see this with celebrity voice actors, like in DreamWorks and Disney movies. Not every celebrity voice actor is bad by any means, but you can tell there's an entirely different skill set at play most celebrity voice actors don't seem to employ. For instance, some of the best celebrity voice actors tend to be comedians, because so much of that job relies on line delivery. So if you get a non-comedian celebrity, like, for instance, Will Smith, they're gonna take a while to find their footing in the field. No shame in a poor vocal performance, because it happens more often than you'd think, and it happens to the best of them. Peter Dinklage, phenomenal actor, voiced a character, Ghost, in the video game Destiny, and the performance rather legendarily made Ghost sound like he was perpetually about to fall asleep. Ghost eventually got redubbed by Nolan North, and it's been speculated for ages that it was due to the negative response. This seems to have been a one-time thing for Dinklage in particular, because he's given quality vocal performances since then, like as Scourge in Transformers Rise of the Beast. You didn't know that Mad Max Optimus Prime looking dude was voiced by Tyrion Lannister, did you? A lot of this comes down to stunt casting, which isn't unique to animation. Sometimes a project just attaches a big name just to drum up attention. And devil's advocate here, it's not always a bad strategy. Like when Transformers Prime announced its main cast would include The Rock as Cliffjumper. Pretty recognizable actor. But then Cliffjumper was killed off in the first episode. The casting did successfully drum up enough buzz, so when Cliffjumper got that hole punched in him, people were understandably surprised, which was the desired effect in that case. But other times, this can result in some woefully embarrassing performances. Most confusing of all, I'd say, was Megan Fox's role in the game Mortal Kombat 1. Which is the third game I'm expected to call Mortal Kombat 1. Message from a Mortal Kombat fan, don't be a Mortal Kombat fan. Fox voices Natara, a character who's a vampire, in what I assume is some kind of twisted reference to her role in Jennifer's Body. Funny idea, but Natara's sleep-inducing voice pretty much instantly became a meme among fans, especially those who felt they could do better, either by themselves or with AI. What's particularly baffling about this case is that Natara has a second voice actor, providing her exertion and reaction noises, which for some reason weren't provided by Megan Fox. Even more baffling, this second voice actor is Christina Vee, who has a professional voice acting filmography. She's probably most recognizable as Marinette from Miraculous and Veronica Mayday from Hell of a Boss, so they've clearly got a talented voice actor to portray Natara, at least partially, but despite plenty of pleas from fans to have V redub Natara's lines, it doesn't seem like that'll happen anytime soon. But here's the weird thing. This phenomenon of non-voice actors being poor voice actors, it seems like it's limited entirely to just celebrities. Or at least actors who go from live action to animation. Case in point, a ton of good vocal performances given by people who aren't established voice actors. Eileen from Regular Show consistently has some of the best line delivery in the series. And she's voiced by Minty Lewis, who up until that point was just a storyboard artist on the show. Something similar happened with Nikki Yang starting out as a storyboard artist on Adventure Time and ending up performing as BMO and Lady Rainicorn. Also, there's Gurr from Invader Zim. Series creator Jonan Vasquez, apologies if I pronounced the name wrong, Jonan Vasquez? Series creator very deliberately wanted someone without experience voice acting to portray Gurr, broken robot character, and in walks one of the show's colorists, giving one of the most iconic voice performances in the show.
I gotta sing the Doom song now! Doom, 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 doom.
The devil from the Cuphead show is voiced by a guy who, as far as I can tell, came completely out of nowhere and showed up just to be the best part of the show. Another remarkably impressive case of this was the voice of Rumpelstiltskin in Shrek Forever After. The character was voiced by occasional director and head of story at DreamWorks, Walt Thorne. He recorded a scratch track for Rumpelstiltskin. A scratch track, a dialogue track that's meant to be replaced later by a professional voice actor or whoever they intend to play the role. And apparently everyone loved his performance so much that they kept it in the movie. Sometimes, but not always, just grabbing someone who's naturally expressive enough can give a really good vocal performance. A lot of big name actors already have training in acting, which requires physical portrayal, presence, and facial expressions, something voice acting doesn't really rely upon at all. So it's understandable why established actors don't always translate well in voice acting. But this isn't a universal rule, I hasten to stress. Lawrence Fishburne, for instance, voiced Beyonder in Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Compare his on-screen performances in any movie he's been in and listen to how he plays the Beyonder. It sounds almost completely different. That comes down mostly to a difference in tone and delivery. You see? It's a developed skill. So what's the lesson here? I've got no idea. I made this to be informative. Sometimes there's no moral to stories. There's just mildly interest to be had, and like usual, I hope everyone liked listening to me ramble. Okay,
Clap. One last voice actor to shout out, Will Feidel.
I'm sorry if I am pronouncing your name wrong. This dude came from what's functionally my hometown. I have to shout him out, and that's the last one, I swear. In conclusion, I don't know. Voice acting has more depth than people give it credit for, and I hope I shed some light on interesting things about the field. Good luck, aspiring voice actors. When you inevitably break into a good performance, don't sound so surprised. This has been Cartoon Gateway, and I'm your host, David Hollander, portrayed by David Hollander. Tune in next time, where we won't answer your burning questions like, does Captain America know about what happened at Hiroshima?
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.